So welcome to another unboxing video from the playersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're taking a look at the long-awaited People Power from GMT Games. So this is a volume 11 in the coin series. This is Insurgency in the Philippines, 1981 to 1986. This is designed by Kenneth T. This is a game that we've been looking forward to for a very long time. It's been in the works for a while. I went through a number of different kind of developments and things like that. Unlike most coin games, this is a 1 to 3 player game. So this kind of slots in that same kind of family as All Bridges Burning, where that was a 1 to 3 player game as well. However, this one is quite different from that, from what I can tell. All Bridges Burning was almost like a straight war game at times, whereas this is, looks to have a lot more of a traditional coin stuff in it. So, People Power. Rules of play, if you've played a coin game, especially if you've played All Bridges Burning, you will understand most of what's already in here. I think the 3 different factions, you have the government, you have the NPA, which is like the opposition forces, and I don't know what that stands for, and I probably should, and then you have some reformers, who I think are more, they're more passive opposition rather than kind of violent, proactive opposition, if that makes sense. Violence, maybe not the right word. So, then we've got a playbook. Playbook is twice as big as the rulebook. So we have different setup instructions for scenarios in here, extended examples of play, and then a lot of history and notes and card explanations as well, and the history behind each one of those. That's kind of a, that's a calling card of the coin series now, where they have those in here, which I really appreciate as well. Again, lots of different history and timelines and things going on here, which we also really like. A quick start guide for returning coin players. So if you played a coin, here's what's different about this one and what you can expect. I really like that kind of stuff, because it helps us to just pick these up and get going with it immediately. I'm going to butcher this. Is it Bonifacio? No, that's Italian. Bonifacio? Who knows? I don't know how to pronounce this, so please tell me how to pronounce this. So this is the rules for the card bots or card AIs or bots that come in this one. So it used to be that coins would come with all those flow charts, but ever since we had the bots for Gandhi is like the first one. All Bridges Burning has these. They've gone back and done the Truong bot for Fire in a Lake. This is kind of how the bots are done now for these coin games. It's a deck of cards that has a list of priorities on it, so it isn't doing the same thing every time. It'll go through a set of card priorities, and then will do the same thing every time. It doesn't, but it can get into those still, which is fine. So, something that I thought was very interesting in this is the sheet of counters for this. And really, there's very few counters in this game. Like, it's just your support, resist, and oppose, which is nice. That it's not just kind of passive oppose, active support, passive support. They've got this triangular, 3-pronged kind of approach to it. So it's not just a binary between 2 factions. They've gone for this, I don't know, I really like the potential of what this dynamic could provide in the game. Because usually you have like opposition and support forces, and then other people filling a vacuum between those 2 things. Whereas this one is a 3-way tug of war, which I think that could provide something very new and interesting in this game. A couple control markers and all the things you might expect, but I mean, there's like half a sheet of counters in here, so that's, I don't know, normally you can fill up a whole sheet of counters at least with coin stuff. So we have our play aid cards here. So we have the regular play aids, 1 for each player, and this has your operations and special abilities for the NPA, for the government, and for the reformers. And on the back you have your election round or your propaganda card, however you might recognize that from other titles. That's the same on all of those. We do have a bifold, and so this is for the bots. So if you're not using the bots, if you're not doing it solo, don't worry about this. But basically this has all your move priorities for all the different factions based on destinations and origins. Space selection priorities, and then all of the different events that they would or wouldn't do. Because some events they just don't do. They would rather do ops and special activities. And then the election round for the non-player factions, what they're going to do within those. We have a couple off-map holding sheets. These are just kind of a thin card. They're dual-sided, which we're going to talk about here in a second. We have the board, and then we have a bunch of pieces. There's a massive shipping insert, which we will get rid of. But I wanted to show you the board first, before we get into some of the other bits here. Because this is a very small board. So it reminds me a little bit of Falling Skies, where you had this really small board, but you'll note that we have the player sheets for the holding boxes for the player pieces and the bases and stuff. So this stuff is kept off map, so you do have a bit more table creep than just this tiny little board. But they were able to reduce the size of the board by keeping the little play sheets kind of separate. One thing I did really like is that on the back of it, you've got your own setup instructions, so you're not all just fighting over the one page in the rulebook to try and set it up. So I can set up all my stuff, they can set up all of their stuff, and they can set up all of their stuff, right? We can all, so that means setups that much extra bit quicker, but also, the really important part of this is you have this section here. So, who am I? The New People's Army. And it gives you a little blurb about the faction that you're playing. How do I win? And it's not just, so, here you've got your little victory conditions. Government control plus patronage greater than 18. Okay, cool. I, as an experienced coin player, understand what that means. But if this was your first coin game, it's written out a bit more of you're trying to build bases and do these rally operations to do all of that, and you're trying to do strikes to do this, that, and it's not just these are your conditions of victory. This is how do I go about achieving those. And then it says how do I stop the government from winning and how do I stop the reformers from winning. And this level of upfront face value explanation will be a huge boon to brand new coin players, because when we teach coin games, I can tell you how to win, but also you have to know how to prevent other people from winning. And so, because you want to build your own stuff, but there comes a time where you have to stop other people doing their things and take a break from your own stuff. And getting that balancing act right can be tough for new players. I see it regularly with Andy and Abyss online. So I really, really appreciate that they did that. That makes the game a bit more accessible, but also it means your earlier games will be that much more competitive than they may have been in other titles, where that stuff's maybe not as upfront available. So yeah, just wanted to kind of show that. The map itself isn't massive, right? There's not a ton of different areas, but you've got your cities that you've got going on. They have population values, a control box, and they have a holding box for the, once again, support, opposition, and resistance, which again I think is cool. I also would just like to point out that this game, the counters have a different style to some of the old ones, and I just think I like it. I like the way it looks. It's got its own little art direction. It's very minor as a component of the game, but I like it. Just wanted to say that from the counters little standpoint. I just think they have a cool typeface and an art style. I just think it's neat. So we have dice, one for each of the different faction colors. We have all the pieces. There's a good amount of wood in here. So you've got your white and black pawns, which are used to mark where you're conducting operations and special abilities, are what they're called in this game. We have our flat cylinders of each color. These are bases. So you're going to have your bases on your holding boxes here, and then you're going to put them out onto the board. And this tells you how many bases you've got. That's going to probably affect your income. And then we have these larger cylinders, and these larger cylinders are used to track your resources on this track around the outside. And also they're used to track your eligibility on this track as well. And if you look, they have their corresponding, so this is the government one, which has the little 2 fingers up for support. We've got the little 1 finger up for oppose, and we've got the closed fist for resist. Oh, that rhymed, unintentional. So that's neat that it's not just the stars that we've seen in old games as well. So I like when they do, you know, put in some little changes like that. Playing pieces wise, very similar to other games. You got the dark cubes for troops, light cubes for police. I imagine that's what those are for government forces. For the NPA, we have the octagonal cylinders with the closed fist resist symbol on them. So that's kind of a very traditional insurgent piece. And then for the opposition, it's the circular, regular cylinders with their symbol on it. Circular ones like this, typically speaking, indicate that this is a non-violent faction. If you think about Gandhi, that game has the Muslim League and the Congress factions that have the cylinders. Typically, that indicates that they're a non-violent faction, so they're not going to be out going doing like terrorism and stuff, but they'll be leading strikes and more kind of traditional civil reform. So that I hope that that's the case, because the dynamics between those different types of factions has been very interesting in the more recent coin games as well. And the last thing that we have here is a big old stack of cards. Oh no, I can't get it open. Here we go. So the stack of cards has the regular event deck with the priorities on them, but also we have our solo bots, or AI bots, because you could do it too with one. Okay, so we'll look at those here in just a second. So here's the event cards. That's very interesting. Okay. These are very different. So these are, we're going to look at these separately, because those are different. See, these are the event cards. The event cards, they say event on them in black. Now, the event cards are what you might expect. So they'll have some picture or image on them and a title, but it's kind of off to the side here. We have our priorities. So government first on this card, then reformers, then NPA. And that, you know, that's going to determine based on your eligibility. Then you'll have 2 different parts of the card, typically. I'm sure they have some which is just 1, maybe. They do in other coins, maybe not in this one. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. So you have this unshaded action where the government can do nasty things to you, or you have this shaded one that might be better for the insurgent factions. There's not a ton of them. There's only 36. So that's very interesting. Then we have our election cards, and the election cards have different things on them here. Enrich only adds person, yeah, so I guess whoever gets elected has their own special kind of effects on the game. Kind of like the governors in Gandhi, or the presidents, or the leaders, I would call them in Fire in the Lake. Something that's different here are these cards. This is something new. And I don't know if these go into the deck, but we have these blue government personalities with all their different special abilities on them. We have these yellow personalities, and we have these red NPA personalities. But then we also have acts of desperation. And I wonder if these are not dissimilar from your kind of, what are they called? Brilliant strokes from Liberty or Death. You get a bunch of them here. If age is 10 or more, patronage +2. It's just something that you can bop on them. I don't know if these go into the deck, but there's 3 acts of desperation for each of the factions as well. So I'll be curious to see how that works. And the last thing we have are the bots. So again, if you have two players, you can have 2 players and 1 bot, or you can have 1 player with 2 bots, or you could run all 3 bots yourself, but I don't know why you would do that. So the bots function is this little deck of cards, and you're going to look at this blue stuff here, and it's like, hey, do we fulfill this? There's a little green tick, we go down here, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and it says stop. If we don't, we're going to go red, and we're going to go down here, we're going to do this. And then some things will make you kind of flip a card over here, and you're going to go through one of these until it says stop, basically. And then you're going to draw a new card next time, and it has different conditions. So you're not going through the same flow chart. You can kind of think of this as 6 different mini flow charts, although really there's 12 because it's dual-sided. But these new little bot decks, and again, there's one for the government, and there's one for the NPA, those bring a lot more variety than the old original flowcharts used to, and so I'm very appreciative that they're continuing down that road. But I know that was a lot. This looks like there's a lot of fresh new stuff in here. I like what I'm seeing already. I'm very curious to see what the 3 factions interplay with. It looks like the non-violent reformers have a lot more to do in a traditional sense rather than just doing their own little thing. Them working on opposition and putting opposition out. I'm so curious about this. I think this could be really, really interesting. So I'm very, very, very excited to try People Power. We're going to play this as soon as humanly possible, basically, and let you know how it is. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.